as they come in. So thank you all for being here. As I said, it's nice to see some familiar faces. I'll just quickly go through my little spiel here, because I know we've got a lot of good information to get to. So again, welcome to our part 3 of our 3-part series on Let's Talk About SCI and Intimacy. So tonight we're going to be talking about sex and sexuality. So for those of you that don't know me, that are new to our call today, my name is Julie, and I am one of the peer program coordinators for Spinal Cord Injury Ontario. And my manager of the peer program, Lubna, is going to be helping me out tonight, admitting new guests and making sure that everything runs smooth. So just a couple of rules of engagement. Everyone, we will mute everyone throughout the presentation to cut down on background noise. And we are going to be recording the session. So if you don't wish to be seen, please just click off your video. And there will be a Q&A after Wallace and Melanie are done. But if you do want to ask questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen, and we could possibly ask them throughout as well. So I think that's it for that. So now I just want to give you a little bio on our presenters. So Randy Upper, who's also known as Wallace, has a Master of Social Work degree and is a registered social worker. He is currently working as a clinical research associate with a focus on spinal cord injury and other acquired neurological disorders. As a person with a T6 complete SCI, Wallace lives his life to the fullest. Melanie Earle has a Bachelor of Arts degree with a double major in English and Women's Studies. She worked as a human resources professional for over 15 years, holding a CHRL designation until 2020, when she retired from the field. She is currently working on expanding her knowledge of spinal cord injury and the spinal cord injury community, fulfilling her passion for working with people and making connections. So Melanie and Wallace, I will now turn the presentation over to you guys.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you, Julie. Well, first I want to start off by saying happy Pride to everybody.
Happy Pride.
And thanks for joining us for our third and final session of our 3-part series. Tonight, as Julie said, we're going to be discussing, I think she said, sex and sexuality. Now, for those of you who don't know us, in addition to what Julie said, we are an inter-able couple, with myself having the spinal cord injury, and Melanie unfortunately does not have spinal cord injury. But if you want more information on our background, please visit our website at t6talk.com.
Mm-hmm. Great. We aim to be inclusive. We hope that what we share tonight resonates with you. Our talks are based on our lived experience, so we wouldn't presume to speak for you. We're always looking to gain greater diversity by interviewing people in the spinal cord injury community, with a special focus on BIPOC and LGBTQ2+ voices. We're also looking to hear from the singles out there as well, whether we connect tonight through this presentation or later on our website. During the first 2 sessions, we discussed myths and misconceptions, as well as communication styles and their impact on self-talk in the conversation we have with others. We peppered this content with personal experience as a couple and individually, with Wallace doing a lot of the heavy lifting on that. This week, we're going to take a different approach. Tonight, Wallace will share his personal view on his own sexuality and his sexual experiences from pre-injury to now. His personal accounts will then be peppered with the content that we've covered over the past 2 weeks. Although Wallace is a therapist and his work has also given him insight into this topic, he is not speaking as a therapist. He is speaking as a peer to support the SCIO peer connections. It's also important to repeat that because the personal accounts are coming from one individual's experience, it's going to be narrow. Regardless, we hope that there's enough commonality in the content that each of you will be able to find something that you can relate to. We invite you to reach out to us through our website and share your story or stories, as much or as little as you want to share. That way we can weave a much more diverse tapestry and increase the likelihood of others finding a message that resonates with them.
So for those of you that have been with us for the other 2 sessions, you'll note that regardless of our timelines that we set, we loosely follow them. So we are going to be probably presenting or talking or however you want to put it for 45 to 50 minutes. And then the last 10, 15 minutes or over the 60 minutes, if it goes that far, that's fine with us. We'll be looking for people to share their experiences or ask questions. What you need to do is, I guess, put your comments in the chat box or wait till after we're done and then raise your hand and we can unmute your mic so that you can share. We're gonna present this session differently than the first two. I have, with my experience with public speaking, I tend to not really use a script. Scripts really throw me off. We'll talk about this a little bit later on too, and I want to mention it now, is that I was diagnosed with a learning disability after my spinal cord injury. Actually, it was just part of all the different tests and stuff they do on you after spinal cord injury. And I have a really hard time with reading and with writing. Speaking, I don't really have a problem. But when I try to follow scripts and stuff, I get lost and it's hard for me to follow and to read things out loud. So if you see me stumbling tonight, that's why, because what we've decided to do is I am going to read from a script tonight. How we would prepare for our sessions is Melanie and I would go out for drives. We drive through the country or we go sit somewhere in a parking lot looking at some of those beautiful trees. And we talk and we would record the session. And then we bring that home and Melanie would listen to it, she'd transcribe it, and she'd put it in order and make a really beautiful script that was usually a good 2.5 hours long. And then we would cut it down and cut it down and cut it down until we got into something that was hopefully going to fit within our time frame. But when telling my journey through my sexual journeys since my injury, she put together such a beautiful script that really encompasses everything that I wanted to say and that we wanted to get through. I thought it best that I just read from this. So I may stumble at times, I may repeat words and do different things, but I'll get the message across. So it's going to be like this is a chapter out of the book of my life. So it's
like a book reading.
It'd be like a book reading, yeah.
Yeah, you can do signings at a later date.
Virtual signings.
That's right. So we have some great links on the sexuality page of our website. We're currently working on gathering more material to support and complement these 3 sessions. We were going to try to discuss them here, but there's just not the time, and we felt really the focus needs to be on Wallace's story. We hope you'll visit the site and contact us if you have resources that we can add. We need to point out that inpatient care at rehab hospitals is changing. It's been great. Patients and partners, if applicable, are given information and education on sex post SCI to explore when they're ready to do so. Post discharge, there's other supports like Spinal Cord Essentials, which is found through the UHN, and there's certainly SCIO, the material on their website, these peer connections, Core Tree as a fountain of information. And then there's self-education through exploration and experimentation that's always available to all of us at any time. Remember when we talked about body mapping. So, okay, Wallace, let's start by doing a quick recap on the definitions that we'll be using for sex and sexuality. So let's start with sexuality.
Okay, so sexuality is about who you are, what makes you you. It's how you see yourself. It is a culmination of all the parts of both your learned experience and basically who you are. It encompasses your gender identity, your sexual self-esteem, self-image, body image, sexual expression, and your lived experience. Your sexuality is not the same as anybody else's, although there may be similarities and overlap between other people. Your sexuality is unique to you.
What about sex?
Sex is how you express your sexuality with others and yourself. And it may include such things as hugging, kissing, cuddling, masturbation, penetration, orgasm, traditional or not, the use of toys, fetishes, which are a sexual fixation on a specific object or act, kinks, which are alternative sexual interests, including BDSM. Basically, what it comes down to, if there's consent between 2 adults, the sky's the limit. Note that sex can trigger autonomic dysreflexia, also referred to as AD, for those with injuries T6 and above. We have information on our website about AD, or you can simply Google it. If you're not sure, speak to your healthcare provider to get information. And if anyone is unfamiliar with this and would like an overview, you can also put something in the chat.
So thanks for the recap on that. Would you share with us the messages you brought with you from your pre-injury self?
Okay, when I was initially injured, it was hard to define my sexuality. I knew I had to redefine myself. Throughout our lives, the messages we are given help us to define our world. Sometimes the messages that we receive and own are not accurate, but we do not understand that but we may not understand that they are inaccurate.
There's also the messages we receive that we may feel are suspect and we just don't own them. But maybe due to societal pressures, we may give the impression that we believe the messages to be true, kind of like a protective response. I'm thinking about those of us who do not see themselves represented in the narrow definitions of male and female, masculine and feminine, or the heteronormative default. A trans girl may know that certain messages do not apply to her and look for where she might be represented or where she might fit.
Right. Most of us want that sense of belonging and acceptance for who we are. The inaccurate messages that we own can stay with us a lifetime unless something significant happens to challenge them, like a spinal cord injury. We start to question these messages when they no longer fit or serve a purpose, like the myth people with spinal cord injuries are non-sexual, seen as a wheelchair rather than a sexual being. This message will not change unless it's challenged. I brought with me certain assumptions and beliefs about disability and a complete lack of knowledge about spinal cord injury. I didn't realize there were complications beyond the ability to use your legs. Bladder, bowel, sensation, genital function. Never thought about people in wheelchairs ever having sex. It just didn't register. So, did I assume that people in wheelchairs don't have sex? When I was first injured, I questioned how I would ever fully have sex again. I was stuck in the traditional and rigid mindset. I struggled with my sexuality as a teenager. I did not fit into that dude or machismo category, the exaggerated masculinity. I had no patience with the guys who did fit into those categories. I did not feel the need to have power over others.
I think each of us struggled as teenagers. Neither of us identified with the messages we received about what it means to be masculine or what it means to be feminine. So when we did not fit into those restrictive boxes, we wondered if we might fit into another box instead. So we questioned if we might be gay. Was that a closer fit? Did that resonate? But when we both explored that avenue, we realized that it was more about the narrow vision of what masculine and feminine is. We do not identify as masculine or feminine. We use those terms solely to identify traditional views.
That's right. We saw ourselves as different from our peers, but we still looked at ourselves or still looked to put ourselves in some kind of box, which is really very interesting. It really speaks to social pressures.
And safety, some sort of safety of being confined in the, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I am a cisgendered man, meaning that I identify as the gender I was assigned at birth. I was sexually active at an early age and have experimented a lot. So by the time I was 20, when I had my accident, I had a clearly defined sexual identity. I enjoyed having sex with women. I enjoyed the pleasure of, the pleasure coming from my genitals, but I also had some great sexual experiences that were not centered around my genitals. I was fortunate enough, and actually I'll tell you a story about, and this was not too long before my accident, how I was at a party and a young woman that I had a crush on for a long time suddenly was expressing interest in me. So hand holding led to kissing, which led to let's go for a walk by the creek beside the house. So we went for a walk, found a place where we lied down, and things started to progress from there. The mutual fondling led to her offering to perform oral sex on me. Now, at the time, I had experienced some genital functioning issues, even as a young man, and so I didn't want to stop what was happening because I was enjoying what was happening. So I thought, you know what, rather than just abandon this at fears of having erectile dysfunction, I offered to perform oral sex on her. Well, it was amazing what that did for my reputation. She suddenly became really very interested in me and would settle at nothing but to get me as her boyfriend. And it soon became known that this had happened. So it gave me a healthy appreciation for the benefit of giving and not just receiving.
Well, I think as a young man, I think that that's like you're a rare breed, because that certainly, I don't think is a common experience, especially for young females who are sexually active with young males. And if we did come across someone like you, it was difficult to process because the behavior was outside of the norm. And many of us were used to giving pleasure, but not necessarily receiving it.
Right. Well, and it's interesting because, I mean, these were my last moments before having my accident, right? Like this is just within a year of that happening. And, you know, at that time, I felt like I had the world in the palm of my hands. My sexuality was based on being physically active, being an athlete, being financially stable, being able to provide for myself and taking care of myself. I lived on my own at a very young age. I left home when I was 18. And at the time of my accident, at 20, I was financially stable. I was excelling at varsity rowing. I wasn't doing great academically, but that was due to the undiagnosed learning disability. However, I had my tight circle of friends. I had a healthy sexual self-esteem and body image. All these things culminated into a really positive self-image. Things were great. I felt like all the parts had come together for me. I knew who I was and I liked them. And then in November 1988, I had my accident. Then I realized what comes with spinal cord injury and paralysis. How was this all going to work? My whole identity was upended and I experienced a loss of myself. I was as concerned about my ability to participate in sports as I was in my ability to have a sex life, and both were at the forefront of my mind. It was what made me me, after all. I had a difficult childhood, which goes beyond the scope of tonight's talk. But sports, it's safe to say that sports saved my life on more than one occasion, and sex was a pleasurable experience that I could share with a partner, and it gave me comfort.
So then you had to go through that process of finding yourself, that sense of self, and redefining your sexuality, right?
Absolutely. I had to, it was a reforming of the self. While in rehab, just a story about a weekend. When I was in rehab, I went to my parents' house for a weekend. It was completely not accessible. I couldn't come and go on my own. And there was an afternoon where everybody was out. Well, I found a Hustler magazine in the house. And so I decided to try to masturbate for the first time in that traditional way. I tried to orgasm and wanted to ejaculate. I got an erection initially. It didn't last and nothing happened. I found that to be so devastating that I cried my eyes out. To add insult to injury, when my father drove me back to rehab that night, we were listening to the Sex with Sue show on the radio, and he told me I should end things with my girlfriend and get used to being alone because there was no way I was ever going to satisfy a woman again. I tried a couple of times after that to masturbate, but it only confirmed that my penis no longer worked in that way. Back at rehab, there was all kinds of talk about an injectable medication to get an erection. Because I was not sexually active in a sexually active relationship at the time, I was not a priority and was not given the education on it or the chance to try it. I had a girlfriend, but we were not together immediately prior to having the accident. And so we're sexually active together. On another weekend at my parents' house, I talked to her and expressed my desire to see if I could still have penetrative sex. It was more like a scientific experiment than it was a sexual experience. It was awkward and it was a failure, and the experiment was abandoned. She left and I cried myself to sleep. Back at rehab, coming back after weekends, that typical dude behavior also made things very difficult. You know, guys wanting to go around showing off their erections that have been using the injections and being hollered at in front of everybody down the hall, asking me if I had gotten laid that weekend. I just found it all to be very immature and I hated it. I felt like I was back in middle school again. It's not how I was pre-injury and it's not how I was post-injury.
Did anyone talk to you at the hospital about sex post SCI, a therapist, nurse, doctor, peer support?
No, there was nothing. Like I said, like in middle school, there were rumors going around about how things worked, and I just found it all to be very embarrassing and very immature.
Do you think it would have made a difference for you if there had been somebody to talk to?
Absolutely, particularly if there was a peer. Like if there was a peer around that had lived experience that you could learn from, that probably would have been the best thing.
Because to have anything would have been great, but to have the choice, peer support, because it's just, that connection is just so different, isn't it? It's a special
Absolutely.
connection.
Yeah.
So the rehab stay gave you the wheelchair skills and the life skills that you needed. You knew that you'd be able to drive, that you could live independently, but you did not get the emotional or sexual support, which are so important in structuring that sense of self.
Yeah.
So we've broken down your post-injury story into sections. So let's start with year one.
Okay, so I was discharged from rehab in the hospital in June of 1989. From there, I moved directly into my own apartment. At the time of my injury, as I had said earlier, I was not with the girlfriend I had in senior high school, and for the first little bit of university. We had broken up by then. But she was the person who was there for me while I was in the hospital, and as a result, we reconnected. She was never really a great communicator, and it became even more difficult post-injury. It was hard to know what we were. She wouldn't sit next to me. She wouldn't snuggle or hold hands with me. She said my hands were too rough. I really felt rejected and unattractive. In the fall of that year, I had to end the relationship. I wanted to explore what was possible, if it was possible, and if I was a sexual being again. I returned to Brock University that September. I felt a real distance from people that I rode with on the varsity crew. But I started to gain academic strength once my learning disability was diagnosed, and I was able to access the right supports. I was playing basketball in the fall of 1989, but there was that same dude mentality that I had a really hard time with, same as before the injury. Around that time, I decided to experiment with papaverine, which was the injectable medication for erections that was available at that time. So I went to my family doctor and got a referral to a urologist, who gave me the prescription and drew me a picture to show me where to inject the medication. There was no discussion about dosage at all. So I went to the pharmacy, no directions, pharmacist said nothing. So I went home and wanted to experiment on my own. Went home and that evening I cracked open the vial and put it in the syringe, and I injected the entire vial into my penis. Well, ended up taking myself to the hospital 6 hours later, marathon erection. The reaction to me, and when I went into the hospital, I was by myself, right? So the reaction to me being alone when I went in was over the top.
Because
Like,
they asked,
They
right?
asked, they said, "Who's with you?" And I said that I was by myself. And they were like, "Really? Well, weren't you with somebody else?" And I was like, "No, I was by myself." And I felt like a freak. And the way the woman came at me to catheterize me as well when I was in the hospital, she looked like she was in a full hazmat suit. You know, I felt like I was infectious. It was crazy. So ultimately what they ended up having to do is put a large gauge needle in the side of my penis and drain out the blood. I was bruised for days. I was left feeling very judged, and I was left feeling very shamed. Moving on to some of my early dating life, there were a couple of women that I had kissed, and there was one of them that I saw for a month or two, to the point where I went and met her parents. But she ended up saying her parents felt that I could not provide for her, so that was her excuse for not being able to go any further with dating me. Again, I felt very rejected because of my disability. In a period of a year, basically, I went from being the rebellious, leather jacket wearing, motorcycle driving varsity athlete who received plenty of sexual attention to getting absolutely nothing. I was the same person, but suddenly my sex appeal was gone. It was extremely hard year.
Okay, I'm going to interject here because I think you need to take a break for a moment, maybe have a bit of a beverage. I also want to recognize what you're giving all of us tonight by sharing your experiences. I know that you're doing this willingly and that you feel it's a worthy endeavor, but it does cost you. So I want to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's not that I have a big head and I want to boast about this stuff. I just want people to know that they're not alone. And if I can help anybody to help with that process of finding themselves and their acceptance, then it's my pleasure. So thank you. In the spring of 1990, I had met back up with someone, reconnected with someone that I had dated early on in the high school. She happens to be the mother of my daughter. And for that reason, there's only so much that I'm willing to share with the group for protecting my daughter. I was excited because what was it? I was excited because we had been sexually active, although minimally. She knew me pre-injury, so it made it easier. She was also working in a field that meant she understood what my paralysis was. So I didn't have to go through that process of explaining all of that stuff about what works, what doesn't work, what happens with my bladder, what happens with my bowels, worry about skin, worry about all that stuff. She knew all of that. And I really thought that would make a difference. And basically when it came down to it, she was attracted to me. She would hold my hand, she'd hug me, and I was really starved for that kind of attention. We tried penetrative sex, didn't work, very upsetting, but when it came down to it, she was pretty cool about it. So at the time, then we talked about using the injections. No other kind of sex was on the table, like oral sex or anything else. She was, by her choice, she was a very traditional person when it came to sex, wasn't very, didn't explore much. And so basically it was kind of traditional or nothing. So I tried the injections again with her. The injection worked well, and we were able to have penis vagina sex. It really worked well for her, but in all honesty, I really didn't get anything out of it. I tried to discuss other options with her to see if she'd be open to anything else, and she was not. Eventually, in time, I think it was a matter of comfort and safety. She was eventually open to receiving oral sex from me, and the switch was made from intercourse to performing oral sex. But again, that was it. That was the limit, was for me to perform oral sex on her. She did not explore my body at all. So as a result, I started exploring my body myself. I still had desire and wanted my body to be satisfied. So I learned how, I found my new erogenous zones, and I learned how to masturbate, but I could not bring myself to orgasm. My relocation, my erogenous zones, my nipples and ears became really very hypersensitive, and I learned that by stimulating those combined with erotic thoughts and imagery was what helped me sexually, helped me. It was enough for me to satisfy myself at the time, even though I wasn't reaching orgasm. Now, I knew in theory that I could reach orgasm. I just was not able to get there myself. So I was left wondering, is this a mental block? Is it something physiological? Just something was missing in the mix of things.
So knowing what you know now, what do you think it was?
It was most definitely a mental block because I got over it. And I was able to find a way to orgasm. It was just at that time, I was just the situation in the relationship I was in, it wasn't possible.
Were you talking to anyone about sex at that time?
Other than really, there was, some talk with peers, but we were all in the same position. Like, the people that I was injured with, we were all going through the same thing. We really didn't know what was happening, what was going on. There was, none of us were really, we weren't getting any. So it was a matter of, we didn't have the experience to be able to share with one another.
You didn't have the experienced peers who've been
No.
Yeah.
No, no. The only peer that I knew that had been in a chair for a while was a woman, and she would share some of her sexual experiences. So it opened up my world in terms of knowing there were options out there, but I hadn't found a woman that I could practice that with in order to have those experiences myself.
Right.
Nor had any of my peers that were injured at the same time as me. However, because of my interest in it and because of my desire to want to go ahead and still have a fulfilling sex life, I started to do a lot of research on my own. So I took a sexuality course when I was at Brock, and it had a component in there on sex and disability. So it really made me wonder what was truly possible. I was approached by the instructor of that course about becoming a TA for the course, and also if she asked me if I'd be interested in lecturing on the part about sexuality and disability. So again, that further piqued my interest into doing research on it. And also, I just knew it was a very important topic. But there was a point where I stopped doing that. I stopped lecturing. I stopped speaking on, because I spoke at conferences and all kinds of stuff on sexuality and disability. But I felt like a total hypocrite because I knew it was possible and that other people were able to achieve the things that I was talking about, but I wasn't living it. So I stopped that part of my life. And it's funny because although I was modeling and I knew that people considered me to be physically attractive, I didn't feel sexually attractive. There was just something, again, a piece of the puzzle wasn't there. And in terms of, staying in the relationship I was in, I was too afraid to leave it because, again, I didn't want to be alone, and I didn't know if people would accept me. Like, they might have found me physically attractive, but they didn't know about the other stuff. They didn't know about the bowel and the bladder and the spasms and all that kind of stuff. So I just worried that there would be nobody that would accept me for that. Within the relationship I was in, there were a lot of other strains, a lot of other stressors going on in that relationship, and I just knew it wasn't working. We weren't partners. We had I had trepidation about ending the relationship. We had got to the point where we were mostly roommates. And again, I was just so afraid of being alone. I didn't want to end the relationship, realizing that is very selfish, but I was afraid. So what I did is I immersed myself in school, excelling at it later, and also very much excelling at work. And I also threw myself into sports, so playing basketball, skiing, golfing, tennis, and then eventually found hand cycling, and that's what I took off with.
So at that point, what was your self-talk? What was your self-talk like?
Honestly, I mean, I can't really remember, but if I take a look at my behavior, I think my self-talk was, I might be physically attractive on the outside, but there's something in me missing that people aren't going to understand. So I better stay with what I have because it's better than nothing. So that really started to change. Actually, the biggest change is when I started racing internationally. I noticed that people were seeing me as a viable sexual partner. Was it the nature of who was involved in the sports, or was it me gaining more of a sense of myself? I don't know. The attention did a lot for my confidence, though. The thing was, I was committed to a marriage, and I wasn't going to step outside of it. We were together for 10 years with little or no sex life, and had gone through at this point several rounds of couples therapy. I gained the confidence to end the relationship eventually, and it freed us both from it.
Do you think it was as much a detriment to her as it was for you to stay in the relationship for as long as you did?
I think, yes, emotionally speaking, I think it was very devastating for her emotionally. She had, yes.
So from the conversations we've had, it seems again that you mentioned it, that you weren't partners, that you didn't share the same goals or priorities.
Exactly. That's absolutely, and that was so important to me. My sense of self-worth at this point, though, had been growing, but it had gaps. I had a sense of deep fulfillment being a parent. I was doing well at school and work. I was participating in sports. I was traveling. I was more independent, self-reliant. I could manage with minimal accessibility. I was starting to be seen as a sexual being again, abroad and at home. I knew I could bring pleasure to myself, and I knew I could bring pleasure to my partner. Sexual fulfillment to me, was much more than just the physical act of having sex. There had to be attraction and emotional connection. What I learned about myself when it comes to who I am attracted to is it's not just the physicality of the person, but it's their personality, their goals, their character, their ideals, and basically what made the person them.
Mm-hmm. So this is about the same time when you went to Germany and you met with a woman who you ended up spending a weekend with in Amsterdam.
My sexual revolution that we talked about. Yes. Yeah, if you missed our first, or not first, our session last week on communication, it'll be posted on our website on our sexuality page if you want to get the full story. But just a brief synopsis of the story itself. Just really all the elements aligned with this woman. We were two people who were attracted to one another. We were both utilizing very assertive communication, and essentially we both just let go. Mm-hmm. Like we just went for it. Mm-hmm. And it was my post injury orgasm, August 2002.
First post injury orgasm.
002. And O's for orgasm. It was a pivotal moment for me. At this point, I felt I had come back to that same level of self that I had prior to my injury, and it took me 14 years.
And you continue to grow and cultivate an even deeper sense of yourself after that.
That's right. I felt a sense of freedom. I was single. I was racing. I was a single parent. I was financially independent. All the elements were there except for a partner. So shortly after the Amsterdam weekend, I met the person who became my next significant relationship. She was more open to experimenting sexually. I learned how to orgasm by masturbating, and my partner could bring me to orgasm as well. She was okay with no intercourse, which worked out perfect for both of us. It meant not having to take medication. This was my first partner I had who was open to the use of toys. In my research, I had read about pain ownership and redefining it. So we picked up a whip, and that's what she used on me. We partied a lot. It was in the beginning, I thought we were both communicating well, but later I discovered she was being unfaithful. The sex was great for about the first year, but this changed over time. Ultimately, the relationship broke down, but it wasn't due to my SCI. We did not have the same goals or priorities. I found myself back in autopilot again in a relationship. I lost interest in doing all the partying and stuff we were doing, and I really wanted more out of life. So after 3 years of being together, I ended the relationship.
So hindsight being 2020, what would you have done differently?
Or ended the relationship sooner.
So I believe the next relationship was with a woman who lived with a common law partner, and she had an open relationship with that man.
Yeah. More specifically, they agreed that she could have other partners. It worked for a brief period, for about 10 months, until I expressed a desire to have another sexual partner for myself, and she didn't agree to that. So again, it came down to communication or the lack thereof, because my understanding of an open relationship, it goes both ways, but she didn't see it that way.
So with the next relationship, you thought there was a better alignment when it came to goals and priorities. Then.
Yeah. I thought we also had the communication. When it came to sex, she enjoyed the feeling of my penis inside her vagina. She respected that I did not want to take drugs to achieve this goal, so we relied on reflexogenic erections. She was very aroused by this, and she would stimulate me to the point of orgasm as well. This arrangement worked for me because it pleasured both her and the fact that I also received pleasure from it. It was a two-way street in this relationship, but unfortunately, my spinal cord injury related health problems that I was experiencing towards the end were an issue, and she left because of it.
So looking back on past relationship, was there a pattern to their demise?
Communication.
Which is why we did whole session on communication
Yeah.
last week.
Yeah, after my first significant relationship post-injury, and after that weekend in Amsterdam, I knew how critical this was. Unfortunately, the people I was in a relationship with did not feel the same way. I had all the pieces except for a partner who would view the importance of communication in the same way. After that last significant relationship, I decided to take a break from relationships, and I was single for 4 years. No dating, nothing.
And then what?
You.
And I am so grateful. Sorry. Your journey has been one of self-love, which isn't always a smooth or direct path. But then again, nature abhors a straight line. You learned from each experience and moved to the next with a greater skill set. You came to understand your own worth and what you wanted from a partnership, and you were not going to settle. You loved yourself enough to demand things from yourself and from the person you're with. Your tolerance level for accepting anything less than your true value greatly diminished. You had to stop listening to the external messages that were reinforcing the myths and listen to your inner dialogue.
No, I'm exactly where I want to be.
Me too. And that's here talking about sex.
Mhm.
So we've talked a lot about allowing ourselves to explore the infinite possibilities available to us in the land of consensual sex. When it comes to penetrative sex or sexual intercourse, it can mean more than penis in vagina action. It's also the insertion of a body part or toy into a vagina, anus, or mouth. One or all of the options may be right for you or none of them at all. This may include the use of aids to help you sustain an erection, lubricants that may help with anal play, which are different from the lubricants that are used for vaginal play. And you can also think about toys. There's so many of them. Modifications can be made, just simple modifications to make them work for you. And there's toys that can be controlled using an app. And I think that these are fascinating. I believe the ones with the app were first created so that if you were separated from your partner by distance, or if they're out at maybe a work meeting, that if they were wearing a device, you could actually trigger it while they're out at that meeting and do something like that.
So if you're ever at a webinar and you have someone go, "Whoa,"
maybe that's what's going on. But you think about it, it could be a really handy tool for somebody with maybe if there's limited hand dexterity. So maybe it's something that they wear themselves that they're able to pleasure themselves with, or something that their partner can wear and then use that as well. There's also things like electro stimulation, which is another option. We're not going to show that yet. It gives little jolts. If that's something that you're interested in, but there's limited hand dexterity, there's little ones that have coverings for your fingertips so that you can pleasure yourself or a partner using those. There's also ones that look like a wand. It's important to consider allergies, especially latex allergies. Wallace has an extreme latex allergy that he has an EpiPen for. If the description on any of the toys doesn't clearly indicate the materials, then just avoid the toy completely. Speak to the people who are in the store or call their customer service line. Silicone seems to be a pretty safe bet, but just making sure that the lubricants that you use are suitable for the toys that you're also using. Otherwise, it can actually break down or degrade the toy. There's a video I watched recently, and I'm trying to find it again, and I wish I had bookmarked it. It was amazing. Had a really great review of some really cool toys. So when I find it, I'll post it on the website. We've agreed to discuss our personal experience with 3 different items: bondage tape, electrostimulation, and magnets.
Ah, there I am. Okay, so bondage tape. I feel like I'm it could be on like what's called The Price is Right or something. So started with something that that was a couple inches wide, and then we went to something that was as wide as saran wrap. You can use it in a variety of ways, wrapping around your part like wrapping up a gift. The visual is awesome. Just the shininess of the rubber, and And it really is very nice for accentuating the curves. So, and Melanie is very curvaceous, so it's nice. It's exciting. Yeah, it's really quite nice. The light catches it just right. There's also the tactile experience because it's cool to the touch. It can be used to stimulate you or your partner that's wearing it, just through rubbing on the body. And next is the electro stimulation, which Melanie took from my hand when I was trying to show you. For me, using this item was about pain ownership. It's a wand that you can safely use on your skin, and it creates a shock. I like the surprise of it. It can also be a giggle factor involved in it. I like it because it's fun for both of us. And what it does is it shifts pain from sensation from bad to good. It
doesn't hurt, but
No.
it's surprising.
It's surprising.
And there can be different levels to it within it, so you don't quite know what you're going to get. Right?
Yeah. So when I'm sitting here working this afternoon, and she walks up and hits me in my tricep with it, it's just like,
I had to put new batteries in it.
we had so much fun with it today. She had to recharge the thing. And then we have magnets. These are little tiny balls, and they're nipple magnets. And because nipples quite often for people become a relocated erogenous zone, because they're an erogenous zone to begin with, but through neuroplasticity, they become even very hypersensitive. So basically, these stick around your nipple. And because different textures and temperatures can be fun to experiment. The thing with those, show how quickly they come together. We have to experiment with them because it goes from 0 to 100 in a fraction of a second. So you got to find a way to have them slowly come together.
It's impossible.
It's almost like slamming a vault door on my nipple when she uses them. So we've got to work on those a bit. But
I think we're going to experiment on your ear.
yeah, we're going to do my ear next. So.
And it's all about experimenting, right?
Yeah, it is.
So,
it's all about experimenting with different things.
And you consider location for variety, certainly, but also for mobility needs. After Wallace had shoulder surgery, we investigated surfaces and heights that would allow us to have fun and not put strain on his shoulders. Sorry.
So it gives us more options after my shoulder is healed. When I think about us, it's about full appreciation. For me, sex isn't just about touching the erogenous zones. It's not just about orgasm. It's about the closeness and the intimacy. We are always intimate, but the way in which we are intimate depends on a variety of factors: level of desire, fatigue, pain levels, hormonal fluctuations, privacy, etc. On one hand, we have times when sex is full-on event, and on the other hand, we cuddle up naked and just put our hands on one another until we fall asleep. Intimacy is always present. Spontaneity and planned moments, both are satisfying. And this is something that I want to point out. A lot of people think that because you have a spinal cord injury, that spontaneity is gone. Not true. It depends on what you define sex to be. You can do a lot of things very spontaneously and have a lot of fun with it. There are moments when the timing is off for one of us. What I love about us is that we can readily express when we don't feel in the mood, so to speak. And it's not a matter of feeling judged or letting the other person down. Like, it's accepted that there are things that come, other things that come into play.
And I think there's times where we need to check in and get validation that there isn't something else going on. But generally, we take those moments in stride and don't question it.
That's right. Again, it comes back to our communication. These sessions are an example of the way we communicate, the preparation and the execution. Plus, we both knew what we wanted and didn't want sexually, and we've been able to openly talk about those things since we met.
The greatest turn on for me is having a partner that I'm so connected with. You can do things for me sexually that I've not experienced before, either on my own or with another partner. Sometimes it's just the look that you give me. I feel seen fully and completely. From the first time I saw your body, your whole body, I saw what it was capable of, what you are capable of. And the scars all told a story. And you are beautiful. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable. We surrender to one another and into sex. I think we would have been electric together as young adults, but we both have strong personalities. We needed our experiences to genuinely appreciate one another and have what we have now. I think people also need to allow for moments of humor in their sex lives. There are two stories that I want to share, and I'll try unsuccessfully to share them with you without laughing. When we first met, we were talking on the phone and texting, and we were talking about having a nap. My bed was quite high up at the time. I had to, in order for me to get into the bed, I had to put a knee up in order to get on top of the bed. So I actually measured from the floor to the top of the mattress. And then I told Wallace, I said, okay, this is what the measurement is, and asked if he could make that transfer. And he replied with, oh yeah, we'll make that work. And I still remember standing behind him, and when he got up to do his transfer, I just grabbed him by the waist of his jeans and just kind of threw him on the bed. And it was the best decision I ever made.
I clearly made it.
Yeah. Then there was another time when we'd spent a fair amount of time fooling around in bed.
Oh, I wish I could see everybody's faces.
I
after this
know.
story.
Sorry,
So.
guys. We're both tired, but we weren't ready to end the fun. And Wallace was providing me with oral gratification when I sensed something was different. Something had changed. And I thought, oh, I was going to try something new. So there was kind of a slowdown. And then I heard him snoring. And then the snoring woke him up. And then I started laughing. And then he realized what he'd done, and he started laughing. And why the hell not?
Yeah.
It was hilarious. It was just as good as the sex.
I needed a power nap.
Yeah.
Just one of those quick little.
Hilarious. When we were talking about it and we were recording it, when I was transcribing it afterwards, I was laughing.
Constantly, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. So this seems like a perfect place to end our session for tonight on that story. We want to leave you with 4 points. Okay. Wherever. Okay. Understand the impact that myths and misconceptions can have. Explore your biases and educate yourself. 2, understand the power of good communication and the harm of poor communication. Explore your style and adjust as needed. Number 3, the more you are to what's out there and what's possible, the more likely it is that you can have and maintain a healthy and satisfying sex life. The more lived experience you have, the more depth and satisfaction you can achieve. And number 4, both studies and my life experience have proven that once you let go of the traditional and rigid notions, the more satisfied you'll be with your sex life and your overall well-being. Any questions?
Open the floor.
It took us 55 minutes. I said 45.
I know, we timed it. We said, oh, it was only like 35 minutes. We're fine.
Well, we started 7 minutes later, so.
Okay.
And
All
it
right,
was,
so that gives us 10 minutes of discussion if we run
Yeah.
that.
and it's been amazing. I don't think anyone is minding having to stay a little bit longer.
Okay.
So yeah, we've got a couple things in the chat box.
Okay.
So the first one is from Tracy Palmer. Thank you for sharing with us. Unfortunately, the healthcare system in Ottawa hasn't changed much since the 90s. Minimal education is provided, but they are currently working on this with the staff. Many of the people with SCI that I speak with ask how orgasm pre-injury compares to orgasm post-injury. What are some descriptive words you would use for orgasms post-injury? And then she just says the Sexual Health Clinic in Vancouver has amazing resources also.
Yes, they do.
Yes, they do.
We
Yes,
went, we visited them. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
So pre versus post injury orgasm. Well, first, pre injury, it was really all synonymous or it was about the ejaculation, right? So it was about the sensation that you had when you ejaculated. The orgasm now.
Because you can only really speak from a male perspective.
That's right. I'm only speaking from a male perspective.
You've talked to friends female friends with an SCI, but.
Yeah, and I mean, their experiences are similar, however different. Everybody's is different. But how I would describe it is it's different in some ways, but the same in others. The intensity and the buildup is the same. So when you talk about the heart rate, the goosebumps, I get a real sweaty forehead. And the rise, when you feel that rise in your arousal happening, is very much the same as pre-injury. However, pre-injury, that end is kind of like the fireworks part that you like when you see in movies and stuff, where when a guy ejaculates, there's fireworks everywhere. Well, there was that kind of explosive release of energy, but now I find it's more of there's two different types. One is where I get a flooding of warmth throughout my entire body, like it goes tips of my fingers, and the neuropathic
Did you say like
tingling.
Emanating?
Yes, it just emanates all through, and then the neuropathic, like the throbbing and the burning sensation that I get in my legs and in my genitals heightens. But it's
did you say the bottoms of your feet?
Yeah, the bottom, like the arches of my feet, up my calves, my inner thighs, where in my taint and my testicle area, it throbs, but it's not painful. I think because it's associated with that heightening sense of arousal and that final release, that it's quite pleasurable, and it vibrates and it tingles.
I think when you describe it, and what we've talked about earlier too, is it's similar to a female orgasm, where it can emanate. So it kind of has that similarity.
Yeah. And there's other ones that are jolting.
When the women with spinal cord injury have talked to you, do they talk about it being similar to that?
Very similar, depending on the type of orgasm that they have.
Because there's a variety.
But there's a variety as well, but very similar. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the other orgasm is more of a shooting one, where it happens suddenly, where there's that buildup, and then I'll get like a jolt of release that goes out down my arms and feels like it shoots out the end of my fingers.
Looks like you're gonna have a stroke.
Yeah, that's what you've said. You've asked me if I'm all right a couple times afterwards. So, because I get all red and just sweaty, and yeah. So I don't know if that answers your question. It was hard to just put simple words to it, because I don't know. It's unique. It's amazing when it first happens. My God. So.
And I think too. I think it depends on experiences pre-injury too, because there's some people pre-injury that maybe not everybody achieves orgasm.
No, but not everybody achieves orgasm that's non-injured too.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm saying. So it can be tricky, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it's sometimes it's not a lot of it, but it can be like a mental block of just not allowing yourself to just kind of ride that wave. Well,
like when I said in that first relationship that I was in, I was unable to bring myself to orgasm when I masturbated. I think a big part of it is I felt, why can't I? So I was putting pressure on myself.
Yeah.
Again, because I had read things theoretically about how it happens. So why is it not happening to me?
So you got in
my head, which is the same problem I had with erectile dysfunction when I was a teenager.
Right. Okay.
So it happens once and you're like, what's wrong with me? And then it happens again, and then the cycle goes
on. Okay, so the next couple are comments. So, wow, your openness and honesty is refreshing, and the self and mutual respect you both have is beautiful. The next is from Alex. Kelly and I want to go shopping for toys with you.
Yeah.
Laugh out loud.
Right.
We'd love to have our T6 Talk van, Alex, and we'd like to have toys in it. And I love working with tools, so we could like MacGyver stuff and add things to it. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah. Actually, we do have a friend that wants to open a sex shop with Melanie. That would be great. With it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lubna had just mentioned, for those in Toronto region, We have had the Nuki store present to us before, and their location is wheelchair accessible. I'd imagine a lot of these places too would maybe be online.
There's some feedback, Julie. I'm not sure if there's sorry, it was hard to hear you.
Oh, that's okay. I'm just seeing if everyone's on mute. Oh, thanks, Phil. Yeah, so sorry, Lubna was just saying for those in Toronto region, we have had the Nuki store present to us before, and their location is wheelchair accessible. And I was just thinking, I wonder with COVID now too, if all these places
They
have
do,
an online
and there's a lot of ones
component
where
as
you
well.
can actually book appointments to, so that you can have time. So if you just were to call, they might be busy, but you can actually book appointments. So you can do like virtual shopping as well, because it's all well and good to, I think, look online, but when you can actually have somebody, when you go into a store and you get past maybe some difficulty of what that can feel like, you can ask the people anything. And if the people aren't treating you well, then you turn around and you leave the store and you go to another one. But generally, you can have some really positive experiences, and they will show you and take out everything and show you how it works. And you know, so they'll do the same thing remotely now, I believe, Julie, with COVID.
Yeah,
That's great.
I think Tracy was just saying that Venus Envy in Ottawa is very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we've got one more here. Ottawa now introduces sexuality to every inpatient and passes along many of these provincial resources on sexuality and offers sexual counseling for all patients if they consent. We are really looking forward to having Wallace talk about his experiences with the staff once we overcome this latest COVID outbreak. Thank you so much for being so inspirational. I have really enjoyed listening to you talk.
Thank you.
It's been awesome.
My ears got a little bit red.
It's funny too, just from my experience. So I, with a rehab center, I was injured 21 years ago, and I was 21 at the time, and there was no talk or anything. And the day of my discharge, I had my bags packed. I was waiting for my family to come pick me up. And that's when the nurse came in and said, "So do you have any questions about sex?" And I'm
Oh my God.
I am out the door. Like, this is,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I do. And I was, again, 21. So I was young at the time. And, you know, obviously everyone knows how traumatic it is after an accident. So I wasn't really there to ask questions and like in the right headspace. But I think had it maybe been brought to me and asked to me earlier on, I would have felt maybe more comfortable to ask questions, but at the last minute, it was
to be asked at some point and then be given time to think about
It's
it.
like planting a seed, right?
And
like,
then coming back to have that conversation, because
exactly,
even if they had come 3 weeks before that and just asked you, you may not have responded right away, right?
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
fine.
But again, that was 21 years ago. And, you know,
Yeah.
I do think a lot of rehab centers are trying now to make it part of the everyday therapies too, right? And information that they give, which is awesome.
See signs that it's coming around for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Does anyone else have any? There's no other questions or comments in the chat box, but if anyone wants to unmute and if they have any comments or questions.
I was going to say, wasn't there a sex store in Toronto on Queen Street? I remember Kelly finding it somewhere and they had actually some sex and disability classes that they used to offer at night. Yes, yeah, that's what it was.
There's Come As You Are. There's also Good for Her vibrators, but Come As You Are is a co-op. It's quite an amazing, and they do the you can book appointments with them, Alex, to during COVID. So
okay,
yeah. And I understand it takes, I don't know where this comes from that we can sit here and talk about some of this stuff, because we're both introverts. Well, I know, like, but to do this, it's important, right?
Yeah.
And so it means something to us. It's not because we just want to talk about it. We're intensely private. So this seems almost contrary to really how we are about it. But it's just so important.
It's
And,
Well, it's
and so I understand, or we understand how difficult it would be to unmute yourself, to put a camera on, to have a conversation right here, right now.
Yeah.
And
It's
but
taken a lot to get to this point.
yeah,
So
please consider, reaching out and just even to let us know how this was for you with what we've done, and let us know what we did well, and let us know how we could do things better.
Yeah.
Because we are continually growing and learning.
And please, for anybody out there who has, I know, because we certain resources have been shared with us tonight that we didn't know about, like that one in Ottawa. And if you know of any other resources that are out there regarding sexuality and spinal cord injury, whether it be from the communication we talked about to the actual sex toys, please let us know so that we can populate that on our website, because we'd really like it to be a source of information where people
Coming
can
from
just
everybody, not
Yeah.
just us, looking around. It's
a shared
a
community.
shared community resource.
Okay, we've got one more comment in the chat box. I was 6 years old in rehab, so there was no sex talk. But growing up and having checkups, sex was mentioned but never really elaborated on. It's nice to see
Yeah.
they do it now.
Mhm.
Yes.
Definitely. Phil, did you have a question, or I just noticed you unmuted or
Oh,
commented?
sorry, I just unmuted. Yeah,
Oh, that's okay.
I was just gonna say how good this is. Being an old fart, I'm learning a lot new stuff,
Yeah.
and because nature of my disease is I didn't go through rehab or anything like that. I spent plenty of time in the hospital, but nothing was ever offered to me, like not a thing. And I've learned more from Randy or from Wallace and Melanie from the last about 6 months than I have for years and years, and I was once handed a book and a physiotherapist gave me on sexual positions, and like this might help you, because after having 4 major back surgeries and then having my neck fused and just nobody said nothing, no family doctors, nothing.
Wow.
Well,
Yeah.
I think there's just an overall lack of comfort with talking about it, and I think just because somebody is a medical doctor or somebody is a therapist, like a medical, like a physiotherapist, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're comfortable with it. So I think it speaks to a larger issue about, we think we're so liberal when it comes to so many things, and we just,
Again, we talk about those myths and misconceptions. There's a lot of taboo. There's a lot of misunderstanding and biases and everything else.
Think about the messages.
Yeah.
And the messages, I know the messages given to me, like you're certainly not supposed to masturbate. Sex is only for certain things at a certain time.
Yeah.
And you're told that it's dirty in some way, and feel shame about it. So
you're gonna go blind.
Yeah. So
Stuff like
I
that,
actually had a family member say to her son in front of, it was a group thing. He was like 4 or 5 years old at the age when they tend to put their hand, like girls and boys put their hands down their pants or figuring things out. And she told him it was gonna fall off, and she meant it. And I looked at that little boy and I got down to his level and I said, that's simply not true. I just thought, how can you be so careless in the things you say? And I think we're just there's a reason why we're so uncomfortable. We just have to get over it. It's like going in to buy condoms or going in to buy feminine products.
Yes.
That there's such a
Or a man.
why?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Or even make it worse, a woman buying condoms and a man buying feminine products.
Right.
There's just all these differences and different rules and different beliefs, and
And I think it's just it damages
Ever
all of
notice?
us.
Sorry, I was just going to ever notice where they put all the lubricants and stuff and condoms down in the aisle in like Shoppers Drug Mart in a drugstore. It's down near the pharmacist, so you don't feel comfortable. You just kind of wait till everybody's out of the aisle and
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
true.
so if people want to look at lubricants, go to a sex shop because they have way more variety and really cool people to talk to. It's fascinating. I'll go in and there'll be people like half my age, and I'll just start talking about something, and they're like, "Oh yeah," and then I can show you this and show you that, and
they don't treat you like, okay, hold on, you've got gray hair,
Yeah,
or
Doesn't
you're in a
matter.
wheelchair, or
doesn't
whatever.
matter.
What are you doing in here? Nope. They're like,
No. And I think in all the people I've met in any of those stores, there's maybe been one where I thought I'm leaving because this is not cool.
Well, when COVID's over, I'm coming with you guys.
absolutely. We'll have a whole train of chairs going.
That's right.
Don't turn the clothes sign over.
That's right. By appointment only.
Yeah.
Oh God, that's funny.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for being a part of all of this. This has been, I mean, this is something that it's bringing to fruition something that I've wanted for decades, and to finally find the right person to not only spend my life with, but to also pursue the things that I am passionate about is phenomenal. Like it's just, I'm just finally the match has been made. So,
And a thank you as well again to you, Julie, and Lubna, and to SCIO.
Yeah.
Just great, and to everybody who showed up. Thank you very much for coming.
We would gladly come back to do, anything else
Yeah.
again if there's need.
Want.
Yeah. Just let us know.
Well, sorry, Wells, I was just going to say, we have been extremely fortunate to have you guys do this, because like, as we're all saying, it's such a topic that needs to be talked about more, and listening to you guys, you just make it so comfortable, and you're sharing such intimate personal stories, and it's awesome. Like I cannot thank you guys enough. These past
You're
3 weeks
so
have
welcome.
been amazing information, and again, you just make it comfortable and funny and easy to listen to, and I think it just makes people more comfortable to ask questions. And I've posted your email or website, so again, it's t6talk.com, and I've gone on it recently, and you guys have really done a good job with everything that you've got on there. So thank you.
That's Melanie's. That's Melanie's. That's her job, actually.
Baby, yeah.
She spends so much time on that site, and Joy's like, I've got to drag her to bed some nights. Get off the computer. But yeah, she's very passionate about it. It's awesome.
Yeah, you can
great.
tell. And just to let people know too, we've got our peer program. If you ever need looking for a woman and a woman's perspective, Melanie Wallace, I think you've done a great job too, noting that this is, your own personal experiences, and everyone's got their own experiences to share. So if ever anyone's looking for a woman or another man's perspective, we've got our peer program that we've got great mentors that are willing to share.
And also sorry, Julie, I thought you were done.
No, go ahead.
We have just recently ordered our podcast recording equipment. So if there are people out there who would like to share their stories, let us know, because that's the next step in our journey, is to start interviewing people with spinal cord injury. I mean, our dream, I mentioned this at the very beginning, is to have a motorhome and drive across our beautiful country, interviewing people with spinal cord injury, because there are marvelous things that happen in the everyday life of people. You don't have to be a superstar to be a super person. So if people feel they've got a story to tell, please let us know, because we'd love to get to that point of being able to interview you and share the story that you want to share.
And there's different ways to express that, right?
Yeah.
It could be verbally, it could be written, it could also be in art that somebody does.
Sure.
So if there's a way that you express how you feel and it is through art, that's another way. There's no one way.
Yeah.
So
I'll sign up for it anytime. Well, Melanie and I have been talking back and forth for the last.
Yeah, what's going on with you and my wife, Phil?
I know, eh? No, I'm happily married 35 years. So No, I made a vow that many years ago, and I'm as loyal as a stump. I planted my
No,
roots,
I'm
and that's where I am.
I'm just
I know you
teasing
are. I know you are.
Yeah.
No, but
Yeah,
your
well,
wife
I'm
has
glad
been
you guys are having some
great.
real valuable conversations.
Yeah, it's been great. It's helped me open up an awful lot, because I'm
Good.
very reserved and keep everything inside, and it's kind of pulled stuff out of me, and I'm going, oh, I really wrote that, so it's been
Sweet.
good. Yeah, it's been very
Awesome.
therapeutic
I
for me.
appreciate your courage, Phil. It's been a
No,
privilege.
it's great what you shared with me too, about your brother and stuff. Just amazing. It's been such a great journey for me since I took the cognitive course back.
It's amazing how one thing can open so many doors.
I'm thrilled. And then with the spinal cord injury, Ontario has just been absolute godsend for me because it's just like opened up so many doors, and it's
The doors
just
are there.
See the impact of what you do, Julie and Lubna?
Yeah,
This is
absolutely.
the two of you too,
Yeah,
you
you've
guys.
changed my life.
Well, this is why we do it,
so
right?
much.
We like to
Absolutely.
share information, and sort of on that note too, we've got lots of good peer connections coming up. So if you ever, you can go onto our website and see all the upcoming events, and you just register. We send you the Zoom link, and we hope that we're sharing information and getting it out there on all sorts of different topics.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
The aging one was really good too. Sorry to interrupt. And the aging seminar that was done has been really good too. Yeah. So where can
and
we
that one
find
is recorded too, so we'll get
Is
that
it?
on.
So where do we find that again to watch if we want to watch it over again?
So Spinal Cord
sorry, go
Injury
ahead, Lubna.
Ontario has a Core Tree
Okay.
TV, a learning platform. We are
Okay.
still working through getting all the consents and getting all the
Sure.
video content up to quality, and we're trying to edit it and stuff like that. As soon
Okay.
as that happens, we will send it out and announcement.
Oh, good.
If if there is, there are quite a few questions. Maybe, do you receive the FYI on SCI, the newsletter? We'll make sure that for sure as soon as that happens.
That's wonderful.
We'll send emails out, and we'll send some information out through our e-newsletter.
Well, I'm so grateful for everything. I really am.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. That's very nice. Okay, so if there's no sort of last minute comments or questions, I'm just going to thank our sponsors. So our provincial partners, the Insurance Bureau of Canada and Hollister Inc., who is our provincial bowel and bladder, as well as vehicle modification sponsors. And then also our regional sponsors, which is Westminster Foundation and Economic Insurance. So again, if there's no last minute questions or comments, Wallace and Melanie, thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome and really fun to listen to you guys. And we really appreciate you doing this 3-part series for us.
It's been a lot of fun. And you say about things being funny, if you ever want to do a travel one, I have got such funny stories about traveling around different parts of the world with other people in chairs.
Or escalator stories.
Or escalator stories, or getting trapped in subways and all that stuff. I mean, I've got a stand-up routine that I'd love to do so I could practice.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And there's been some misadventures along the way that have been scary at the time, but a lot of fun in retrospect.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank
I can't
you
imagine.
so much, guys. I hope
Can't imagine
everybody
the
had a
trouble
Thank you,
we're
good
gonna
everyone.
get in. Sorry.
Have a
was
good
that
evening,
Phil?
everyone.
I was just going to say, I can't imagine the trouble you and I are going to get into just
Yeah.
about 5 minutes apart when COVID's all done,
Awesome.
Yeah,
I
it's
look
going to be
forward to
great.
it.
Good night,
Me
guys.
too. Good night. Thank you so
Great.
much,
Good
everybody.
night, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Julie.
you.
Take care, everybody. Good night.